Why was her hand trembling again? Lieutenant Commander Alex Mitchell stood in the merciless Nevada sun, her shadow stretched thin against the scorched concrete outside Hangar 7. The recruits on the firing line squinted through the heat shimmer, rifles clumsy in their hands, sweat running into nervous eyes. To them, she was the instructor, the decorated officer, the calm voice of authority. But she felt the tremor in her left hand, subtle, barely there, a quiver only she could feel and the ones who looked for it. The barrel of her coffee mug rattled against porcelain. She stilled it quickly, hoping no one noticed. Yet she saw Sergeant Mike's smirk from across the range. Marines always had a way of finding weakness, of smelling it like blood in the water. She hated that he'd seen it. Commander Mitchell. Ensign James Collins had appeared at her side, his uniform so crisply pressed it practically shone in the desert light. Still new, still wide-eyed, still believing the world made sense. "The recruits are ready for the next phase," he said, stiff with formality. Alex nodded, eyes narrowing against the glare. She studied the faces lined up in formation. Young, eager, frightened. Some trying to hide it, others failing miserably. They reminded her of herself at 22, before Afghanistan, before the scars, before the choices that carved themselves into memory. "Today," she called out, her voice carrying over the range, "we're covering the M16A4. Respect this weapon and it will keep you alive. Treat it like a toy and it will kill you. Pay attention." The recruits straightened, eyes on her. She demonstrated grip, stance, the rhythm of breath with trigger. Her voice was even, her posture perfect. But her left hand betrayed her, a micro-movement, almost invisible, except she saw it, and saw it. The Marine's voice rang out, just loud enough for the recruits to hear. Perhaps the commander could demonstrate a proper rapid-fire sequence, show these sailors what real marksmanship looks like. The challenge was unmistakable. Her chest tightened. She knew what was coming, the spike of adrenaline that turned her own body into enemy territory, the sweat beating faster, the way the rifle, once an extension of her soul, would feel foreign. She had lived this loop before, the quiet humiliation of failing at what once defined her. But naval officers didn't back down, not in front of recruits, not with a Marine smirking like a predator waiting for the kill. "Of course, Sergeant," she said evenly. She took the rifle. The weight was familiar yet heavy. She breathed in, chambered around, and raised it to her shoulder. First shot wide. Second closer but off-center. Third, her grip slipped. By the sixth, whispers ran along the line of recruits like wind in dry grass. His grin stretched wider. "Interesting technique, Commander," he said, voice dripping with mock respect. "Perhaps the Navy should consider lighter weapons, something more manageable for personnel with limitations." The words cut like shrapnel. She said nothing. She handed the rifle to Collins, turned, and walked away. Her boots struck hard against the concrete, each step echoing the whispers that followed. Her body was in Nevada, but her mind was already gone. Afghanistan Valley, 2014. The mountains unfolded like jagged teeth beneath her sniper nest. A landscape beautiful, merciless, lethal. Chief Petty Officer Mitchell, SEAL Team 6, lay prone against the. Beside her, a M82A1 rested like a trusted lover. Through her scope she tracked movement a mile away. Taliban fighters establishing what they thought was a secure outpost. The voice crackled in her earpiece. "Target confirmed, Sierra Yankee. High-value package. Authorization granted." "Copy that," she whispered, phantom engaging. She hadn't chosen the name. The Taliban had. After too many commanders had fallen from impossible ranges, they believed a ghost haunted the mountains. They never suspected the ghost was a woman. Her breathing slowed, heartbeat steady. Numbers clicked through her mind: distance, elevation, wind speed, temperature. The kind of math that kept men alive. At this distance, a .50 cal round dropped more than 200 inches, perfect compensation or total failure. She squeezed between heartbeats. The roared. The recoil pressed into her shoulder, familiar, controlled. Through her scope she saw the commander collapse lifeless before the sound of her shot even reached the valley. "Target down," her spotter confirmed. "Damn Mitchell," Master Chief Frank Martinez whispered as he crawled up beside her. His weathered face carried years of war, his voice a gravel that somehow reassured. "Mentor, father figure. That's your fourth confirmed kill beyond 1,500 meters. Intelligence is calling you a ghost." He smiled. "That's why they'll never see you coming, kid. The best warriors are the ones the enemy never knows exist." She smiled back. For a moment she was invincible. For a moment the world made sense. She had no idea it was their last successful mission together. 3 days later, the IED would change everything. And now, back in Nevada, the tremor in her hand was the ghost of that day. Later in the base psychologist's office, she sat rigid in her chair. Dr. Sarah tapped her tablet, glasses perched on her nose. "You're distracted today." "I'm fine, doctor." "We've been through this," said softly. "After 6 months, I'd hoped we'd move beyond I'm fine." Alex flexed her left hand without thinking. The scar across her palm caught the light. The doctors had rebuilt the bones, stitched muscle, restored grip. On paper she was whole. In truth, the tremor was never physical. Studied her. "Your hand is healed, Commander. The question is, are you?" Alex's jaw clenched. How do you explain that being good at something feels dangerous? That competence comes with expectations you can't bear. That failure is easier than proving you still belong. Shifted, Admiral William arrives tomorrow for inspections. You know his reputation. Alex did, ruthless, political. He cut personnel the way surgeons cut tumors, and he would see her tremor, her hesitation, as weakness. That night, alone in her quarters, she stared at her medical clearance. Fully capable, no restrictions. No excuses. Shields protect, she thought, but they also keep you from firing back. A knock. Lieutenant Kelly stepped inside, her oldest friend, one of the few who knew the truth. "Heard the old man's making rounds tomorrow," said. "Looking for dead weight." "Then he's come to the right place," Alex muttered. His eyes hardened. "How long are you going to keep this up? This act, this shadow of yourself? I saw you at range 7 2 nights ago. 15 shots, 15 bullseyes in the dark, with the—" Alex's chest tightened. "You followed me." "I was on patrol, saw the lights, leaned in." "Your hand works fine when no one's watching. You move like a shooter, you think like a shooter. But when eyes are on you, you fold. This isn't about the injury. This is about what happened about Martinez." The name hit like a round to the chest. Martinez, mentor, father, the man who had saved her life and lost his career because of it. "Tomorrow we'll try to make an example of you," said. "Don't let him." Alex turned away. "That woman died in Afghanistan." "No," said firmly. "She's just waiting for you to remember who you are." The next morning, the desert shimmered with heat. Recruits ran drills, sweat darkening their uniforms. Sergeant's voice carried across the yard like a vulture circling. "Not bad for squids," he barked. "But in the Corps we expect more speed. Life or death doesn't wait while you figure out which end of the rifle to hold." Then his eyes found Alex. "Your turn, Commander. Show them how it's done, unless the hand's acting up again." The challenge hit its mark. The recruit stilled, watching, waiting. Her hand trembled before she even touched the rifle. She loaded, aimed, executed the reload drill, fumbled, corrected. Seconds bled away like lifeblood. When she finished, her time was double the standard. Unacceptable. Deadly in real combat. His voice cut in, low but audible. "Dead weight. Some people don't know when it's time to step aside." And that was when Admiral William appeared. Silver hair perfect, ribbons gleaming, uniform razor-creased. A man who had never heard shots fired in anger but held power over those who had. Problem here, Sergeant? He asked smoothly. No, sir. Commander Mitchell was demonstrating alternative techniques. Smile was thin, calculated. His eyes found Alex, and she knew tomorrow's demonstration wouldn't just test her, it would destroy her. As the Admiral walked on, the recruits whispered again, shadows at her heels. That night the base slept, but Mitchell did not. At 2300 hours, she unlocked the armory with her instructor's clearance. She carried the M82A1 to range 7 under the stars, alone, silent, free from judgment. She set up 6 targets, 400 meters to 1200, some moving, some hidden. She loaded match-grade rounds. The rifle settled into her shoulder like coming home. Breath slowed, heartbeat stilled, the tremor vanished. 6 shots, 6 perfect hits. The desert echoed with steel ringing steel. And for the first time in years, Mitchell felt whole. A voice behind her broke the spell. Damn, Alex. She spun, rifle ready, stood there, night vision goggles glowing. How long have you been watching? Long enough, said softly. The hand works fine when nobody's watching, so why are you still hiding? The question lingered in the night air, heavy, unanswered. Because admitting she could still shoot meant admitting the wound was inside, not out. Because proving she was whole meant risking failure again. Because it was easier to be dismissed than to be depended on. Alex said nothing. She packed up her movements automatic. Tomorrow would try to break her, and maybe she would let him. But in the desert night, under the stars, she had remembered the truth. She was still the phantom. And ghosts never die. Why was Admiral smiling? The morning air had carried a tension that made every recruit stand. Every officer polished their tone until it gleamed. Inspections always did that, but was different. He wasn't just here to check boxes. He was here to cut. Mitchell felt it long before he spoke her name. The way aides hovered, the way senior officers avoided his gaze. He thrived on the unease he created, and she knew deep in her bones that he was already sharpening his knife for her. By 900 hours, the range was alive. Recruits ran drills under the merciless Nevada sun, sweat soaking their uniforms before breakfast could settle in their stomachs. Barked critiques sharp enough to sting, enjoying the theater of correction. Collins stumbled with a reload, jaw tightening with frustration. His voice carried across the yard. Not bad for squids. In the Corps we expect more. Life or death doesn't wait while you fumble. Recruits shifted nervously, caught between respecting their instructor and fearing the Marine who mocked her. Then turned, voice oily. Your turn, Commander, show them how to do it, unless, his smirk grew, the hands acting up again. The silence was instant, boots stilled, rifles lowered, the entire range leaned into the moment. Alex picked up the M16. It should have been instinct load, slap, rack, reload. She had done it thousands of times, blindfolded, half-dead with exhaustion under fire. But today, under eyes, under judgment, her hand betrayed her. Tremor, slip, correction. Seconds bled away like wounds. When she finished, the silence broke with a few nervous chuckles. Not cruel, just recruits too green to know better. But leaned close enough for her to hear. Dead weight. Some people don't know when it's time to step aside. And then Admiral appeared. He was silver-haired perfection. His uniform knife-edged, ribbons heavy across his chest, smile honed to a scalpel. Authority radiated from him like heat from asphalt, but Alex knew the truth. He was a politician in uniform. A man who had never heard the crack of a round in anger. A man who wielded power because others had paid for it in blood. Problem here, Sergeant. His tone suggested he already knew the answer. No, sir. Commander Mitchell was showing us alternative techniques. Smile cut deeper. His eyes lingered on Alex, cold, calculating. Then he moved on, aides in tow. But she had seen it. The decision already made. Tomorrow's demonstration wasn't just a test. It was the stage for her execution. That night's barracks settled into sleep, but Alex lay awake, staring at the ceiling until she couldn't anymore. At 2300 hours, she was at the armory, signing out her under the guise of training prep. She carried it to Range 7, where stars burned sharp above desert silence. 6 target, 6 impossible shots. 6 perfect hits. The rifle was steady in her hands. Her breath slowed, heartbeat dropping into the familiar rhythm where the world narrowed to math and instinct. And in that quiet, the tremor vanished. For a moment, she was whole again. His voice startled her. "Damn, Alex." She turned, heart racing, rifle half lifted, lowered her NVG's, face soft in the glow. "How long have you been watching?" "Long enough," sat on the bench, gaze steady. "The hand works fine when nobody's watching, so why are you hiding?" Alex said nothing, because to admit the truth would be to admit it was never about muscle or bone. The wound was inside. The failure was fear. She finished packing, though, her hands steady in the darkness. Tomorrow would make his move, and she wasn't sure if she would stop him. Dawn broke sharp and merciless. By 900, black SUVs rolled across the tarmac, dust rising in their wake. Pentagon brass stepped out, their shoes unsuited for desert grit, but their eyes sharp. Played host, his voice smooth as he welcomed them, gesturing toward neatly prepared stations on the range. Today's demonstration will showcase the advanced marksmanship capabilities being developed here at. Each station represents a different skill. We'll begin with basics and conclude with long-range precision. His eyes found Alex. He didn't need to say it. Everyone knew the finale would be hers. Appeared beside her, uniform immaculate. Word is bringing in his pet sniper from Lieutenant Commander Jackson, former Marine, metal board darling. "Perfect," Alex muttered. "Have me fail, then let his ringer show them how it's really done." "You don't have to let it happen that way." His voice was low, urgent. For a moment, Alex wanted to believe it, to believe she could reclaim the phantom in broad daylight, but memory was heavier than hope. Valley, Martinez, the choice she had made, the weight of it still pressing her chest. "It's just a demonstration," she said finally. "Let him have his victory." Looked at her with something like disappointment. "This isn't you, this is fear talking." Before Alex could answer, the PA crackled. "All demonstration personnel, report to the main range." The gallows awaited. The firing line had been transformed. 6 weapon stations, each gleaming with preparation. The final one, hers, showcased the M82A1 under the desert sun, black steel waiting. Addressed the crowd with theatrical precision. The .50 caliber, semi-automatic, effective beyond 1,500 meters, a weapon requiring exceptional skill. Commander Mitchell will demonstrate its use for our guests. 200 meters of open ground separated her from the weapon. It felt like walking to judgment. Every eye followed her, every step echoed. She settled behind the, adjusting bipod, sight, breath. 6 targets waited, 400 to 1,200 meters, challenging even under perfect conditions. Her hand trembled. First shot wide, dust kicked up 10 inches off target, murmurs spread. Second closer, but still a miss. By the fourth, whispers grew into quiet conversations. By the sixth, she could hear someone suggesting her removal from instructor duties. "Equipment malfunction." His voice carried false concern. "Perhaps the rifle needs adjustment." He strode forward, all confidence and charisma. "Sometimes it helps to have fresh perspective. May I, Commander?" It wasn't a question. He settled behind the with practiced flourish. Every move designed for theater. He explained fundamentals loudly, breathing, trigger control, sight picture, as if lecturing a class. Then he fired. The shot went so wide it didn't even hit the target frame. Dust erupted 30 meters left. A silence spread, confused, uncertain. He adjusted quickly. Wind compensation, Desert conditions require. Second shot high right, lost in sky. Third clipped the frame, 6 feet below bullseye. His smile cracked, gestures grew frantic, confidence melted under the desert sun. This rifle is clearly, scope alignment is compromised, barrel possibly warped. He stood flushed, voice rising. Commander Mitchell, this weapon is not serviceable. And that was when something inside Alex shifted. Not rage, not humiliation, something colder, cleaner. She stepped forward, voice steady. Sir, I'd like my rifle back. The crowd stilled. Even the desert wind seemed to pause. Narrowed his eyes. His hands tightened on the stock. For a moment she thought he'd refuse, but with 200 witnesses, including Pentagon brass, he couldn't. My rifle, sir, she said again, calm but edged with authority. Please. Reluctantly, he handed it over. The settled into her hands like truth itself. And for the first time in months, Mitchell felt whole, not a shadow, not a failure, herself. She lowered behind it, adjusted without thought. The desert fell silent. She breathed, aimed, squeezed. First target, 400 meters, destroyed in a shower of steel. Second, 600 meters, moving in the wind, center mass, clean hit. Third, fourth, fifth. Each one fell with surgical precision. The sixth, 1,200 meters, barely visible through haze. She took her time, felt the wind, calculated ballistics like instinct. The shot cracked, the target rang like a bell. 6 for 6, under 90 seconds. She stood still in her hands. Silence, not disbelief, awe. Collins's eyes widened. He looked like he was staring at legend. His face was pale, fear touched his eyes. And for the first time in years, Alex Mitchell stood as herself again. The phantom wasn't gone. She had never left. Why didn't anyone clap? The range was silent. Not a cough, not a shuffle of boots, not even the whisper of desert wind against the shooting stalls. 6 targets destroyed in less than 90 seconds. No hesitation, no tremor. Mitchell stood with in her hands, smoke trailing like a memory of war. She wasn't sure if she wanted applause. She wasn't even sure if she deserved it. But she could feel every eye fixed on her, the weight of expectation pressing harder than the weapon resting in her grip. Stepped forward, breaking the silence. His smile was tight, stretched too thin. Well done, Commander. Impressive display, once the rifle was functioning properly. The words landed heavy, calculated. He was trying to rewrite the moment, trying to fold her victory into his narrative. A broken rifle, fixed only under his inspection. Her jaw clenched. She wanted to answer, to call him out, but the rank on his collar reminded her of the leash. He wasn't just an admiral. He was the kind of man who decided careers with a single phrase. Admiral, she said, forcing control into her tone. There was nothing wrong with the rifle. A ripple moved through the gathered officers, quiet but noticeable. She had contradicted him in front of the brass. His eyes hardened. Excuse me, Commander. She kept her stance, rifle lowered but steady in her hands. "Thee is serviceable. My shots were off earlier because I doubted myself, not the weapon. The weapon was fine." It was a confession, naked, dangerous, but truer than any excuse. For a moment she thought he would lash out. She saw his jaw tighten, his hand flex as if it ached to make an example of her. But then he remembered the audience. Senators, generals, Pentagon staffers, journalists invited for favorable coverage. He couldn't expose his temper here. Instead, he smiled again. Cold, hollow. Perhaps we should all take a moment to remember that service weapons are only as effective as the discipline of their operator. He turned to the crowd, drawing their attention away from her, away from the truth. Discipline and obedience. These are the qualities that win wars. The officers nodded, some reluctantly, others with the glazed obedience of men unwilling to challenge power. Alex lowered her hands steady now, her body buzzing with the clarity that only came after a perfect shot. But beneath it something else stirred. Anger. Quiet. Controlled. The kind of anger that doesn't explode but calcifies into resolve. When the crowd dispersed, Collins approached her, eyes wide with awe. "Ma'am, that was," he fumbled for words. "I've never seen anything like it." She almost smiled, almost. "Then you need to train harder, Ensign." But his face stayed earnest. "No, ma'am, I mean it. They talk about snipers like they're legends, ghosts. Today I saw it, you don't miss." Her chest tightened. She wanted to tell him the truth, that ghosts weren't invincible, they were just survivors with too many scars. But she said nothing. Behind him loomed, his expression unreadable for once without a smirk. "Nice shooting, Commander." It should have been a compliment. It felt like a warning. Hours later, corridors hummed with rumor. Officers moved in pairs, whispering about the spectacle on the range, about the commander who had made the admiral look like a fool without even raising her voice. Alex walked through it like a ghost, every step echoing against concrete. She knew how gossip worked in the military. What began as whispers by night could end as orders by dawn. Caught up to her outside the mess hall, word is livid. "I noticed." He called a private debrief tonight. "Senior staff only." Alex stopped, "Including me." Silence was the answer. Of course it included her. She exhaled slowly, pressing down the swell of dread. "Then I'll be there." "Alex." "Kelly," she cut her off gently. "If he wants to cut me down, let him try." The conference room was dim, the air stale with recycled cool. Sat at the head of the table, hands folded, face composed in a way that fooled no one. His aides flanked him, silent. "Commander Mitchell," he began smoothly, "you embarrass me today." No preamble, no false courtesy, just the knife straight to the point. She met his gaze steady. "With respect, sir, I only did my job." "Your job," he repeated, voice sharpening. "Your job was to demonstrate professionalism, discipline. Instead, you made me appear incompetent in front of senior leadership." She wanted to laugh at the absurdity. He had missed every shot. He had blamed the rifle. And yet here he was, twisting it, making her precision a crime. "I executed the demonstration as ordered," she said evenly. "The results speak for themselves." His eyes narrowed. "You think results are what matter. You think killing steel targets proves your worth." He leaned forward, voice low. "You're damaged, Mitchell. Everyone sees it. The hand, the hesitation, the ghosts. You should have stepped aside long ago." Something inside her broke, not like glass, but like a chain snapping. Her voice dropped cold. "With respect, sir, you don't know the first thing about ghosts." His hand slammed against the table, rattling pens. "Careful, Commander." She stood, sling over her shoulder from the range, fingers brushing its grip without thought. "No, Admiral, you be careful." The room froze. Aides glanced at each other, unsure whether to intervene. Stepped closer, invading her space. His voice dropped to a whisper, venomous. "I could end you with a signature, one form, and you're finished. You'll never wear this uniform again." She should have stepped back. She should have. Instead, when his hand shot out, fingers grasping for the stock, instinct took over. Her body moved faster than thought. She trapped his wrist, twisted sharp and clean. The sound was sickening, bone giving way under practiced force. His gasp cut through the room, half pain, half shock. He crumpled, clutching his hand as agony tore across his face. The aides rushed forward but froze when Alex's eyes cut through them like steel. She hadn't aimed the rifle. She hadn't threatened. But the room felt like a battlefield, and she was the only one unshaken. She slung the across her back. Her voice was calm. "Hands off my rifle, Admiral." She left the room in silence. Behind her, groans filled the air. Back in her quarters, the adrenaline drained, leaving only the weight of what she had done. She stared at her hands, steady now, too steady. She had crossed a line, insubordination, assault, career suicide. And yet, for the first time since Afghanistan, she felt free. She sat on her bunk, darkness pressing in, and whispered to no one, "Martinez, I don't know if I failed today or if I finally stood up." But the question lingered, unanswered, because somewhere down the hall was already planning his retaliation. And Mitchell knew the war wasn't over. It had just begun. Why was her room so quiet? Mitchell sat on the edge of her bunk, hands clasped between her knees, eyes fixed on the floor as though answers might appear in the cracks of the tile. Normally was never still. Doors slammed, boots stomped, laughter and arguments drifted through the halls like background music. But tonight, after what had happened, the silence was heavy, like everyone was holding their breath. She hadn't slept. She hadn't even closed her eyes. The adrenaline of Snapping's wrist still hummed through her body, a phantom current. Every time she replayed the sound, bone breaking like dry wood, her stomach tightened. She knew what it meant. Assaulting a superior officer wasn't a blemish, it was a career death sentence. Men and women had been court-martialed for far less, and she hadn't just embarrassed, she had humiliated him, in front of witnesses, in front of power. A knock at her door pulled her from the spiral, sharp, deliberate. She opened it to find standing there, eyes urgent. "Pack a bag," she whispered. Alex blinked. "What?" "You don't have time to argue. He's already moving against you." Kelly stepped inside, shutting the door behind her. "Listen to me, I just came from ops. People are pushing paperwork. Article 90, Article 128. Insubordination, assault, conduct unbecoming. They're building a case. By morning, you'll be under restriction of movement." Alex rubbed her temples, exhaustion pressing hard. "So that's it, my career's finished." Shook her head. "Not finished, not unless you let him write the ending." Her friend dropped a folder on the bunk. Inside were photographs, reports, names blacked out with ink but still readable with effort. Intel. From Kabul, Martinez's mission reports, the kind buried. Alex's throat went dry. "Where did you?" "Doesn't matter. What matters is this. You weren't the liability at Valley, he was." The words landed like a shot. Leaned closer. Was in command approval for that op. He rushed the timetable, ignored Martinez's weather assessments. He signed off on moving through that valley before the recon teams were ready. You and Martinez paid the price. That IED, that ambush, it wasn't random. It was predictable, preventable. Alex's heart pounded. "You're saying?" "I'm saying he's been burying your record for years because if the truth came out, the stain wouldn't be on you. It would be on him." Silence heavy, crushing. Alex stared at the folder, Martinez's name jumping out at her in bold black type. She remembered his face in the dust, the blood, the way he'd told her, "It wasn't your fault, kid." She had never believed him, until now. Her hands shook as she closed the folder. "If this is true, why now? Why tell me now?" His eyes softened. "Because you're not broken, Alex. You never were. He made you believe it so he could protect himself, and I can't let him win again." Alex wanted to believe it. She wanted to feel the vindication, the sudden freedom of knowing the guilt she'd carried wasn't hers alone. But another voice whispered inside her, the darker one. "Does it matter? Even if it's true you broke his hand, he'll bury you anyway." She exhaled slowly. "What do you expect me to do with this?" His jaw set. "Fight for yourself, for Martinez, for every recruit who deserves better than men like him." Before Alex could answer, another knock shook the door, louder, authoritative. His hand went to her sidearm out of reflex. Alex stilled her with a look, then she opened the door. Two MPs stood in the hall, faces stone, hands resting on holsters. "Commander Mitchell, you're to report for immediate questioning. Orders of Admiral." Her stomach turned cold. "Understood," she said, voice steady. The interrogation room was sterile, humming with fluorescent light. She sat at the table, posture rigid, whilst legal officer read the charges aloud. Words like insubordination, assault, and dereliction floated in the air, detached and clinical. She barely heard them. Her eyes were fixed on, standing behind the glass, his right arm in a sling, his face pale but smiling at her like a man who had already won. Every now and then his gaze flicked to the folder under his arm. The same kind had given her classified reports, evidence. He knew what she might have, and he wasn't going to let it see daylight. The legal officer finished reading. "Commander Mitchell, do you wish to make a statement?" Her throat was dry. Words crowded her tongue. She wanted to shout the truth. She wanted to throw Martinez's file on the table and watch Smile crack. But she stayed silent. Because once spoken, truth wasn't free. It demanded proof, demanded sacrifice. And the people in that room weren't ready to hear it. Not yet. "I'll make my statement at the appropriate time," she said finally. The officer nodded, marking notes. "Until further review, you are relieved of duty, restricted to quarters." The words landed heavy, but Alex didn't flinch. She stood, saluted, and left the room with her dignity intact. Behind her, Smile followed like a shadow. That night felt smaller. Word of her restriction spread fast, the way it always did. Some avoided her in the hall. Others gave small nods of respect, silent acknowledgments of what she had done on the range. Collins caught her near the mess. He looked younger than ever, fear in his eyes. "Ma'am, is it true? They're taking you down." Alex studied him, his uniform too crisp, his belief in the system still intact. She wanted to lie to protect him from the truth, but she couldn't. "Yes, Ensign, they're trying." He swallowed hard. "For what it's worth, you showed me something yesterday, something I'll never forget." Her chest tightened. She managed a small nod. "Then don't waste it." As he walked away, she felt it again, the quiet conflict inside her. Pride and despair twisted together, neither winning. Back in her quarters, waited. She didn't ask what happened, she already knew. Instead, she slid another file across the bunk. "This one's clean. No blackouts, no redactions." Alex opened it. Inside were satellite photos of Valley, timestamps matching Martinez's reports. Clear evidence of the warnings had ignored. Her hands tightened. Proof. Hard, undeniable proof. Leaned forward. "This isn't just about saving your career. It's about exposing him. You could end this." Alex stared at the photos, her breath shallow. She thought of Martinez, of the recruits of Collins's wide eyes when he called her a ghost. She wanted to fight. God, she wanted to fight. But she also wanted peace. To lay down the rifle for good, to walk away before the ghosts consumed her completely. Her voice was barely a whisper. "What if I'm tired of fighting?" Didn't blink. "Then let me remind you, the fight doesn't end just because you walk away. It ends when men like him stop writing the rules." Alex closed the file. Silence stretched long between them. Outside, the desert wind howled against the barracks, rattling windows like distant gunfire. Inside, Mitchell sat in the quiet storm of choice. Fight and risk everything, or walk away and let win. She stared at the folder in her lap, her reflection faint in the glossy photographs. Somewhere inside, the phantom stirred. And the question hung in the air. Was she ready to let the ghost rise again? Why was the door unlocked? She had been under quarters restriction for 48 hours, MPs stationed in the hall, every movement logged, every word watched. Mitchell had resigned herself to silence, to waiting, to staring at the classified folder on her desk until her eyes blurred. But tonight the corridor outside was empty. No guards, no footsteps, just stillness. She hesitated, hand on the knob. This was either a test or a message. When she opened the door, a man in civilian clothes leaned against the wall. Tall, broad-shouldered, sunglasses even in the dim hall light. "Commander Mitchell," he said quietly. His voice carried weight, controlled but sharp. "My name's John Mercer, Office of Naval Intelligence. Her stomach tightened. Oh, and I didn't show up for casual visits. You're not supposed to be here, she said flatly. Neither are you. He glanced down the hall. Walk with me. Every instinct screamed caution, but the absence of guards told her what she needed, someone higher than had made this space. She followed. Mercer led her through the back corridors down to an unmarked door she had never noticed before. Inside, the air smelled faintly of dust and machine oil. A single lamp lit a table scattered with files. He gestured for her to sit. You're wondering why a spook is breaking your restriction. I've learned not to ask questions I don't want answered, Alex said. A small smile touched his mouth. Fair, but here's the truth. Admiral's vendetta against you has been on our radar for a while, and your little altercation gave us leverage. Leverage, she repeated bitter. I snapped his wrist, that's leverage. Mercer leaned forward, folding his hands. What you don't know is that been hiding things, reports, intel from Afghanistan, you were there. Valley 2014, ring a bell. The name alone was enough to send a rush of heat through her chest. Martinez, the ambush, the blast. Yes, she said carefully. Then you know what happened wasn't bad luck. It was negligence, orders rushed, recon ignored, warnings buried, all to hit a timetable that made look decisive. Her throat went dry. Martinez knew. Mercer's eyes sharpened. Martinez tried to stop it. He filed objections. He asked for a delay, silenced him, buried his requests. When the ambush happened, made sure the blame fell sideways on you. The young sniper, easy scapegoat. Alex sat frozen. The folder had shown her was damning enough. But hearing it confirmed by ONI, official, undeniable, it was like a dam breaking inside her. For years she had carried the guilt, the belief that her hesitation, her decision, had cost Martinez everything. For years she had let the tremor in her hand be proof of her failure. But the truth was colder, sharper. Martinez hadn't failed. She hadn't failed. Had. Mercer slid a file toward her. Photos, reports, signature stamped across the orders. We need someone willing to testify, to put this into the open. His political shield is strong, but if you stand, we can cut through it. Her hands clenched. You're asking me to go nuclear. You're asking me to blow up my own career. Mercer didn't flinch. Your career's already on life support. He'll make sure of that. The question is whether you go down quietly or drag him with you. Silence stretched long, heavy. Alex's heart pounded with two truths pressing against each other. One, she wanted peace, to let the ghosts fade, to walk away from the weight of rifles and war. Two, she wanted justice, for Martinez, for herself, for every recruit under shadow. Mercer leaned back. You don't have to decide now, but know this won't stop. He can't. You made him bleed in public. Men like that only know one response. She exhaled slowly. And what happens if I say yes? His gaze didn't waver. Then the phantom doesn't just come back. She takes the fight to him. Back in her quarters, Alex stared at the new file until dawn. She didn't sleep. She didn't move. She just let the memories wash over her. Valley, Martinez's voice in her ear, the crack of gunfire, the world going white with fire. She remembered lying on the dirt, her hand shredded, unable to feel the trigger anymore. She remembered Martinez dragging her to cover, his body shielding hers, blood pouring from wounds he wouldn't survive. You'll carry this now, he had whispered, voice broken. But it wasn't your fault, kid. It wasn't your fault. She had never believed him. Until now. Her hands were steady when the knock came. This time it wasn't MP's, it was Collins, young, awkward, nervous. Ma'am, he said softly, I shouldn't be here, but I heard things about you. Is it true? She studied him. He deserved truth, but truth was heavy. Too heavy for a recruit still learning which end of the rifle to hold. Instead she asked, why are you really here, Ensign? His jaw tightened. Because yesterday you showed me something, on the range. When everyone doubted you, you didn't just hit targets. You showed me that sometimes the ghost stories are real, and if trying to bury you, then maybe he's scared of what you represent. Her chest tightened. She wanted to tell him not to get involved, to save himself the weight she had carried, but the fire in his eyes reminded her of herself before Afghanistan, before guilt. Go back to your barracks, she said gently. Forget this, forget me. But he didn't move. Ma'am, if you fight, you won't fight alone. For a moment, silence, heavy with something she hadn't felt in years, hope. That night returned. No folder this time, just resolve. They're accelerating the Article 32 hearing, she said. 2 weeks. He wants you buried fast. Alex nodded. She expected it. Leaned closer. So what are you going to do? Alex looked at her hands. Steady now, but steady. She thought of Martinez's last words, of Collins's fire, of Mercer's warning. She exhaled slowly, a decision solidifying inside her like steel cooling. I'm going to fight. His eyes softened. Then I'll fight with you. Outside, the desert was quiet, stars scattered like watchful eyes. Inside, Mitchell finally stopped running from the ghost. She embraced it. Because sometimes the only way to silence a lie was to let the truth speak louder than the fear. And tomorrow, the truth would begin. Why did the room feel colder than combat? Mitchell sat at the defense table, her dress uniform pressed sharp, ribbons gleaming dully under fluorescent light. She had worn the uniform 1,000 times before. In Afghanistan, it had meant purpose. It meant authority. But here, in the sterile confines of the Article 32 hearing, it felt like armor borrowed from someone else. The courtroom was filled with faces. Officers in rows, aides scribbling notes, observers whispering in the back. And at the center, Admiral William, right arm still in a sling, his face pale but carefully composed. He radiated calm authority, the kind that made men forget what they had seen and believe what he told them instead. She knew his type. The most dangerous enemies weren't on the battlefield. They were in rooms like this, wielding reputation as a weapon sharper than any rifle. The investigating officer called the session to order. Formalities washed over Alex like static. Articles cited, charges listed. Insubordination, assaulting a superior, conduct unbecoming. Words heavy enough to end a career before the gavel even fell. Her attorney, a Navy lieutenant she had just met 2 days ago, leaned in. Remember, we're not here to win, just to determine if this goes to court-martial. Don't provoke, don't admit. Alex nodded, though her chest burned. How do you sit silent when the truth claws inside you? The prosecution opened clean and sharp, a captain with a voice like a knife. Commander Mitchell's record shows competence, yes, but also instability. Psychological evaluations indicate unresolved trauma. Witnesses observed her hand tremors on the range. She embarrassed herself in front of recruits. And then, when Admiral attempted to assist, she responded with violence. He paused for effect, letting the words sink in. A superior officer extended guidance. She broke his hand. Whispers rippled through the room. Alex stared straight ahead, face calm. But inside, her pulse hammered. She wanted to shout, to tear open the folder Mercer had given her and show the truth. But timing was everything. One wrong move, and she would be dismissed as unstable before the evidence ever saw light. The prosecution called witnesses. First, his words measured, rehearsed. I observed Commander Mitchell struggle with simple drills. Her hands shook. She failed reloads. She hesitated, offered assistance, but she reacted aggressively. Lies cloaked in half-truths, enough to sound convincing. Collins next, nervous, sweating. But when asked, he said carefully, yes, ma'am struggled at first. But I also saw her take down 6 long-range targets in 90 seconds. Sir, with respect, I've never seen shooting like that. The prosecution cut him off quickly. We're not debating her marksmanship, Ensign. were debating her discipline. When Collins sat down, Alex gave him the smallest nod. He had risked more than he knew by speaking truth in this room. Finally took the stand. He spoke like a statesman, calm, regretful, his sling carefully arranged, his words polished until they gleamed. I hold no ill will toward Commander Mitchell. War leaves scars on all of us. I only tried to help her. Unfortunately, she saw my guidance as interference. Her attack was sudden, unprovoked. I fear she may not even recall it clearly. The courtroom murmured, sympathy shifting toward him like a tide. Alex's jaw clenched. He was good, too good. He was rewriting the script in real time, painting himself as victim and her as unstable aggressor. Her attorney leaned close. Stay silent, we don't have enough yet. But then Mercer appeared at the back of the room. Not in uniform, no words, just a presence. He gave the smallest nod toward her, the signal. The folder in her briefcase felt like it weighed 100 pounds. Her attorney hissed, "What are you doing? Don't." But Alex stood. The room froze. "Commander Mitchell," the investigating officer said sharply, "you will remain seated unless called to testify." "I request to speak," she said, voice calm but carrying. The officer frowned. "This is highly irregular." His lawyer jumped up. "Objection, this is a stunt." But Alex's eyes didn't leave. For the first time his mask faltered, just a flicker. "Permission to present evidence," she said. The officer hesitated. Protocol battled curiosity. Finally he nodded. "Proceed." Alex opened the folder. Photos spread across the table. Satellite images of Valley. Martinez's reports, requests for delay, warnings of enemy presence. All signed, stamped, ignored by. Her voice was steady. "Valley 2014, SEAL Team 6, operation cut short by an IED ambush. Chief Martinez died saving my life. For years I believed I was the reason, that I hesitated, that I failed. But these reports show the truth. Martinez warned command. He begged for delay. Admiral rushed the operation to meet his timetable." Gasps rippled through the room. His lawyer leapt up. "This is irrelevant." Alex cut him off. "No, sir. This is the pattern. He buried Martinez's warnings. He buried the aftermath. And when the ghosts have followed me home, he buried me. Because if I fell apart, if I became the failure, no one would ever see the blood on his hands." Her voice broke just slightly, enough to cut deeper than shouting ever could. "I didn't break that man's hand because of trauma. I broke it because he reached for the only piece of truth I had left. My rifle, my dignity, the one thing he couldn't take." The room was silent, deadly silent. The investigating officer stared at the documents, at Alex. For the first time his mask cracked wide, his face twisted, voice rising. "This is slander, fabrication. She's unstable, you've all seen it." But the more he spoke, the more the room shifted. The controlled admiral was gone. The desperate man was showing. Mercer stepped forward at last. "The Office of Naval Intelligence can verify these documents." The silence was broken only by the sound of his lawyer sinking slowly into his chair. That night back in her quarters, Alex sat alone. The hearing wasn't over. Formal decisions would take weeks. Investigations, politics, battles behind closed doors. But for the first time, she wasn't carrying the weight alone. The ghosts weren't whispering blame. They were whispering truth. She traced the scar on her hand. No tremor now, just steadiness. She thought of Martinez, of Collins, of Mercer. Of the rifle that still felt like an extension of her soul. And she understood something she hadn't before. Sometimes ghosts didn't haunt to torment. Sometimes they stayed to remind you who you were. And who you still could be. But she also knew wasn't finished. Men like him never surrendered quietly. The fight had only shifted. And the battlefield was about to move. Why did victory feel so fragile? The Article 32 hearing had adjourned with no verdict, no gavel, no clear path forward. just silence. Silence that stretched through the corridors of like a storm waiting on the horizon. Mitchell had dropped her truth like a round into the center of the room, and it had landed with the force she wanted. Had cracked. The mask had slipped. For a moment, power had shifted. But the military wasn't about moments. It was about machinery. And machinery always tried to repair itself, even if it meant grinding the truth to dust. She sat alone in her quarters, uniform jacket folded neatly beside her, the file still on her desk. The evidence. The ghosts transcribed into paper and ink. She should have felt vindication. Instead, all she felt was exhaustion. A knock startled her. She hesitated before opening the door. Slipped inside, eyes sharp. They're moving against you. Alex frowned. The hearing isn't even over. Doesn't matter, it's already pulling strings. Rumors are spreading that you fabricated the documents, that ONI planted them, that you're lashing out because of unresolved trauma. Alex exhaled slowly, the weight pressing heavier. He's rewriting the script again. Nodded grimly. He's good at it, too good, but Mercer says ONI's not backing down. They'll verify the documents officially. That takes time. Until then, you're a target. Alex almost laughed. I've been a target since the day I picked up a rifle. But the humor didn't last. She knew what meant, not just politically, physically. 3 nights later, his training field echoed with gunfire. Recruits drilled under floodlights, shadows stretching across the desert. Alex watched from the sidelines, restricted from formal duties but unable to stay away. The sound of rifles had always steadied her heart. Tonight it just reminded her of how thin the line was between order and chaos. Colin spotted her jogging over. His face was flushed, sweat streaking his temple. "Ma'am, the recruits want you to watch them shoot. They keep saying they want the Phantom's eyes on their line." Alex froze. Phantom. The name whispered in Afghanistan like a curse, now spoken here as respect. She wasn't sure she deserved it. Still, she walked to the firing line. The recruits stiffened, rifles clutched tight, eyes flicking toward her. She nodded once. "Continue." They fired. Some missed. Some struck clean. But all of them tried harder under her gaze. And in their determination, she saw a reflection of herself long ago, before ghosts, before doubt. For a moment, she felt something close to hope. Until the lights cut out. Darkness swallowed the range. Confusion rippled. Recruits cursed softly, rifles lowered. Alex's instincts flared. Darkness in the desert wasn't random. It was cover. She barked down, "Stay low." Her hand went to her sidearm out of reflex. A single shot cracked through the night. Close, too close. It smacked into the dirt 2 feet from her boots. Recruits froze. Collins shouted, "Contact." But there was no second shot. No enemy rushing the field, just silence. And then, almost mockingly, the floodlights flicked back on. The range stood in stunned confusion. No intruders, no explanation. Rushed to her side, jaw tight. "Message," she muttered. "He's reminding you he can reach you anywhere." Alex's chest tightened. It wasn't just politics anymore. Wasn't going to wait for hearings and paperwork. He was going to break her the way commanders break rebels, in the shadows where no one could prove it. That night in her quarters, she stared at the scar on her hand again. She remembered Martinez dragging her from the dirt, bullets snapping overhead. "It wasn't your fault, kid," his voice echoing even now. But maybe this time, fault wasn't the point. Maybe this time it was about choice. Mercer arrived quietly, slipping past curfew like a ghost. He closed the door behind him, his face grim. That shot tonight wasn't random. It wasn't some kid with nerves. It was a warning, someone on leash. "I know," Alex said softly. "Then you also know he won't stop. He can't afford to. You embarrassed him in front of power. You put his career on the line. Now he has only 2 options, bury you or be buried himself." Her voice was steady. "So what's yours?" Mercer studied her. "Mine, I want him exposed for the men and women he's ruined." But I'm not the one who can do it. That's you, because you've lived under his shadow, because you carry Martinez's ghost, and because when you pick up that rifle, people listen." Silence stretched long. Alex's heart pounded with the weight of it. She had tried so long to step away, to bury the phantom under layers of silence and shame. But maybe ghosts didn't die because they weren't supposed to. Maybe they waited for moments like this. Her voice was low but certain. "Then we fight." Mercer nodded once. "Then we fight." The following morning, Alex stood at range 7 again. Alone. 6 targets gleamed in the sun. She assembled the breath steady. Each shot cracked across the desert, ringing steel, echoing truth. 6 for 6, perfect again. This time no tremor, no hesitation. Just the phantom, alive again under the Nevada sky. She lowered the rifle, sun burning her face, and whispered to herself, "Martinez, this time it's not for ghosts, it's for the living." But as she packed up, a shadow moved at the edge of the range. She turned. His arm was still in a sling, but his eyes burned cold fire. He said nothing, just stood watching her, lips curling in the faintest smile. Then he turned and walked away, leaving only dust in his wake. The message was clear. The war wasn't in the past anymore. It was here. Now. And Mitchell knew the next move would decide everything. Why was the air so still? Was never quiet in the morning. Recruits ran drills, trucks rumbled across asphalt, boots hammered cadence into the desert. But today, as Mitchell walked toward the main building with at her side, the base seemed to hold its breath. The Article 32 hearing had been explosive but unresolved. ONI was still verifying documents. The Pentagon was circling, and wasn't waiting. His shadow pressed heavier each day, his allies whispering poison through the chain of command. And yet Alex walked steady. For the first time since, her hands didn't tremble. Inside the operations wing, Mercer waited. He carried no briefcase, no files, just the hard set of a man who knew the battlefield had shifted. "It's moving fast," he said. "He's scheduled a press briefing in D.C. this week. He's going to bury you publicly, frame you as unstable, violent, unfit. If he controls the narrative, evidence won't matter." Muttered a curse, classic. Mercer looked at Alex. "You have one chance to stop him. Go public first. Testify. Put your face with the files. It'll cost you, you'll be marked forever, but it will drag him into the light." Alex's throat tightened. She had spent years hiding, years letting silence bury her, years believing ghosts were easier to carry in private. And now Mercer was asking her to stand exposed before the world. Touched her arm. "Alex, you don't have to do this alone." But Alex shook her head. "No, this was never about me alone." She thought of Collins, eyes wide with hope. Of the recruits, tightening their stances when she walked by. Of Martinez, bleeding in the dust, whispering words she hadn't believed until now. "It wasn't your fault." Maybe this was the only way to make those words true. She met Mercer's gaze, set it up. 2 days later, in a secure ONI facility in Arlington, cameras blinked red. A small press pool gathered, hushed but hungry. They expected a minor statement. They had no idea what was about to unfold. Alex sat before them in full uniform, sling across her back. She didn't need notes. The truth was written into her bones. "My name is Lieutenant Commander Mitchell," she began. Her voice was steady, each word deliberate. "In 2014, during operations in Afghanistan's Valley, Chief Petty Officer Frank Martinez and I were ambushed. Martinez died. I carried the guilt for years, believing my hesitation cost him his life." She paused, letting silence sharpen the words. "But the truth is different. Martinez warned command the valley wasn't secure. He requested delays. Admiral William ignored those warnings. He ordered us forward to meet his timetable. The result was predictable and fatal." Gasps rippled. Reporters scribbled furiously. Alex placed the folder on the table, sliding it toward the press. These are the documents, signed, stamped, by the Office of Naval Intelligence. For years they were buried, along with the truth, and along with me. Her voice dropped softer. I was labeled unstable. I was made to believe the ghosts were mine alone. But the real ghost here is negligence, arrogance, the belief that power can bury mistakes by burying people. She let the silence sit. Then she said the words she hadn't spoken aloud until now. I broke his hand because he tried to take my rifle, but what he was really trying to take was my dignity. And sometimes dignity doesn't ask permission. It acts. For a moment the room was still. Cameras clicked, pens scratched. The truth hung in the air like the echo of a shot. Mercer ended the briefing quickly, ushering her out before questions swarmed. But she had seen it in their eyes. Reporters who had come expecting scandal now smelled blood in the water's blood. Back at Fallout came fast, orders flew. Allies scrambled, the Pentagon opened an inquiry. And then came the call. Admiral has resigned his post pending investigation, reported, a grin breaking her normally stone face. Effective immediately. Alex sat in stunned silence. It wasn't joy she felt. It wasn't triumph. Just a quiet, heavy release. Martinez's ghost wasn't gone, but maybe, finally, he could rest. That night she walked alone to Range 7. The desert stretched wide under a canopy of stars, the kind of silence only found far from cities, far from politics. She set the on its stand, not to prove anything, not to fight, just to feel it one last time. She fired 6 shots into the night. Each one rang true, each one a promise kept. When she lowered the rifle, she whispered into the desert, "Thank you, Chief, for dragging me out, for making me carry it. I understand now." The wind stirred soft like an answer. Days later, she stood at the edge of the training field, recruits lined up before her. Collins among them, shoulders squared, determination etched into his face. She walked the line studying them, young, eager, afraid, just like she had been. "Some of you will be great," she said. "Some of you will fail, and some of you will carry ghosts the rest of your lives. But remember this, ghosts don't come to haunt you. They come to remind you who you are. And sometimes dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts." Collins caught her eye. For a moment she saw belief reflected back at her. Belief not in perfection but in resilience. And that was enough. As the sun set over, Mitchell stood with Thea at her side, watching the desert turn gold. She had faced her ghosts. She had faced herself. And for the first time in years, she felt something like peace. Not because the fight was over. Fights never truly ended. But because she had chosen to stand. And sometimes that was enough.